Hey everybody, it's Tess back again. So today I want to make a video about my process of waking up from my indoctrination as a Jehovah's Witness. So I made a video like that before, a long time ago, like 5 years ago, I think. I don't know, it's my most watched video. So I know that that's what people are most interested in. And I mean, I'm really interested in videos like that too. I decided to go ahead and take that video down and make a new one. And the reason for that is because, I woke up in, 2007. And the last time I went to a meeting or anything was 2005. I went to the district convention, or one day. So my feelings about things have evolved a lot over the years. And I feel like my feelings about Watchtower and just about my family and my life as a witness have changed a lot just in the past 5 years. So I just felt like it was time to update that video, make a new one, and I don't know, maybe give some healthier advice, because I was kind of in a bad place in my life when I made that video, just in general. And I was kind of feeling very hopeless, you know. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but in my own personal life, I just wasn't very happy, and I was feeling cynical. I guess not hopeless, cynical is how I was feeling. So, yeah, I just want to make a video with that story and just, you know, with a more positive outlook, because my outlook has become much, much more positive since then. One more thing before I begin. I am at my house today. I usually make my videos when I'm out of town for work, because I'm always like in a hotel room and it's really quiet and you know, easy to make videos. But I am home right now, and I live in Central Texas, and I decided to sit here and make this video so y'all could see outside. So yeah, this is the most snow I think we've ever had in Texas. And this is like the first year I've lived here. And of course, this is what I am experiencing. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. It was way worse day before yesterday. So this is like nothing. The roads are passable at least. But I thought you guys would like to see that, kind of get a kick out of that. So this might be a long video. I'm going to try to keep it short. But I do have my tea with my cranky cat faces on it, just in case. So, I was born a born-in Jehovah's Witness. Excuse me, I'm also having allergies on top of freezing my butt off. So I was a born-in Jehovah's Witness. And I feel like the story of my family and myself being a witness really, really starts with my grandparents. So I think that the best place to begin is with my dad's mother. So she grew up with her mother and an older brother in Arkansas. And she didn't have her dad in her life, and her mom was my great-grandmother. She was just a really, really awful person, and she was horribly abusive and neglectful of her children. And she never told them that she loved them. She verbally and emotionally abused them severely, just severely, and physically, I believe, too. They were kind of latchkey kids. Like, she was never around to help them. You know, they had to kind of take care of themselves, and they were very close because of, you know, they were kind of going through this together. So my great-grandmother, she got remarried, and this man sexually abused my grandmother. And they were married until my great-grandmother died. He was the great-grandfather that I had. I had pictures of me as a baby with him. You know, a child molester. We just go ahead and let our kid hang around with him. And we all knew that he had done it to my grandmother. So anyway, my grandmother, her personality was just very, very demure, and she was extremely victimized. And she internalized a lot of what was happening to her. Very quiet and passive, and would do anything to please her mother. Because, you know, when you live with a monster, you have to learn how to patronize, I guess, or I can't really think of the word I'm looking for. You just learn to appease that monster. There it is. In, I think, like 1960, my grandmother was 17 or 18, and she fell in love with a boy. And this boy got her pregnant with my dad. So my of course, you know, think about that, 1960 in Arkansas. I cannot imagine. So this is going to sound crazy. So my great grandfather, he gets a knock at the door one day. I think he was maybe a couple of years older than her. So he was an adult, but he gets a knock at the door, and it's my great grandfather with a shotgun. And he says, "Get in the car." And he got in the car, and there's my grandma pregnant with my dad and my great grandmother, and they drove to Oklahoma, and they forced him at gunpoint to marry my grandmother. It was a real shotgun wedding. And they went to Oklahoma because there was like no waiting period. So they got married, and they abandoned my grandfather there in Oklahoma. They didn't take him back to Arkansas. I don't know how he got home. And went down to the courthouse and forced my grandmother to go ahead and divorce him right away. My grandmother did not want to divorce him. I'm sorry. This is why I don't do videos at my house, because I have cats and they're apostates too, and they just really, really want to be in these videos. So I'm sorry about that. So anyway, my grandmother was in love with him, and she was forced to say goodbye to him. And you know, I think at this time she was like 18 or 19. She didn't have to do any of this stuff. She could have run. He was in love with her too. They wanted to be together. And my grandmother was so controlled by her mother that she just did whatever she told her to do, completely out of fear. It's a really sad story. So my dad is born, and she lives with her mom and dad. Her brother had been married a couple of times, but their mother, who was also extremely horribly racist, would she would call him up one night and say, like, the spirits have told, because she thought that she was a medium, you know, like a spirit medium. She was just crazy. The spirits have told me that your wife has in her bloodline is black, like she has African American in her bloodline somewhere, even though she's just like some white lady. And you have to divorce her right now because of this. I'm sorry, my family, that woman, she was a horrible person. So he would divorce them because mother told me to. That woman was crazy. She always believed that she could talk to spirits. And we, as witnesses, like when I was a kid, we believed her. We believed that she was talking to spirits. And the biggest reason was because she always had one spirit that she spoke to the most. And that spirit was named Nancy. And she had been speaking to Nancy for decades. She had been speaking to, Nancy was her best friend since my grandmother was a kid, and Nancy continued to be her friend until she died. She kept a Ouija board with her at all times so she could talk to Nancy. She had to go to California, I guess in the 1950s, to get electroshock therapy. She used to throw like parties, and she would levitate tables to like entertain people and stuff, which, you know, my grandmother, if you think about it, in the 1950s, there's no internet, okay? She I don't even think she had a television. She lived in dirt in Arkansas, and she sees her mother levitating tables, and she talks to Nancy all the time. She's going to believe that this is real, that her mom has powers. So, I mean, she really believed it. She believes it to this day. Now, what I know is that table levitating, things like that, those are party tricks. They're tricks, and she may have been an evil bitch sent from hell, but she was no idiot. She was very, very smart, very shrewd. So I think that she was speaking to people. I think she was schizophrenic because she very well fits all of the, everything I know about schizophrenia, which isn't a lot because I'm not a doctor, but everything that I know about it, I kind of feel like she was a schizophrenic. So anyway, she was just as nasty as she could be. So they moved to another state. My dad is a little kid, and my grandmother starts working in this office, and she meets a new man who she would eventually marry, and he would be my grandfather, my papa. He adopted my dad. He was a wonderful guy. He was a really, really nice guy, and he loved my grandma so much. So she married him, and her mother tried to stop her, but she needed to get away from her mother, get her child away from her mother. So anyway, great grandma calls her once in the middle of the night and says, the spirit, Nancy told me that he's sexually molesting your son. I don't believe that happened. I just don't. Nancy told her everything that she could to get her kids away from, their partners and bring them back to her. So that wasn't happening, but my grandmother believed it. So right around this time, they get a knock at the door, and it's Jehovah's Witnesses. And the plot thickens. So my grandmother and my grandfather, like right around then, had started, studying with the Witnesses. And she threw him out of the house around the same time. And as they got more and more indoctrinated, and it must have seemed like a safe haven from the horror that she was going through. She was taking my dad to a therapist, a child psychologist, and the child psychologist was like, this kid has not been sexually abused. I just don't see it. And she was starting to see that her mother was a liar and was trying to control her and manipulate her and destroy her marriage to someone she loved and that loved her dearly and was good to her son. So she cut her mother off, which means her mother, or she didn't cut her off. She was like, no, I don't believe you and I'm not coming back. Her mother cut her off. Like, okay, well, fuck you, don't ever speak to me again, click. And they became witnesses big time. So my grandfather, my papa, the man that was my grandfather, he had kind of been through a lot too. He was just like he'd been abused a lot too when he was a kid and abandoned by his mother. And he was just, he had a lot of baggage. Nice guy, but a lot of baggage. So he very much wanted to just be super elder, right? And he became an elder really, really quickly. And they have their next child, which is my dad's little brother. So they became witnesses when my dad was 5, and then they had my uncle right after that. So he was always pretty much a witness. So my grandfather was kind of a hard ass elder, and this was, in the mid 60s, late 60s. And he was like presiding overseer and just, being kind of a jerk about everything, which is funny that he was such a hard ass because, as everybody kind of puts it, after I was born, he really softened up, because I don't remember him being a hard ass. I remember him being like one of the nicest, kindest, most gentle men I've ever met. But I guess when my dad was little, he was kind of on a warpath and kind of a dick. So, so in like probably 1970-ish, the end of the world is coming soon. So my grandfather had this great job in Washington State working for Boeing. And Boeing at the time, especially then, like in the Seattle area, was like a very well-to-do place. He had a corner office, with a window, and he wasn't working in the factory. He had a college education. Ex-military. He was doing really, really well for himself, and they had this brand new house. They were just doing very, very well financially. But my grandfather was like, we need to go serve where the need is great, right? Because the end of the world is coming, right? So he quit his job, packed his entire family up, and moved them out to Missouri, into rural Missouri. And when I say rural Missouri, I mean southeast Missouri, Boot Hill country, Ozarks, where the roads don't have names. So he went out there to serve with the need was great and bring people in before the end of the world comes. They were going to do this, but they picked Missouri because he had a half brother who lived out there and was like in and out of jail and just kind of he was a screw up and he was on drugs and stuff. So they moved out there, and incidentally they moved to the town that my mother just happens to be from. So that's how my mom and dad met. Excuse me. So my mother, she is one of, oh my God, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She is second to youngest of 5 children. They were like out in hillbilly country. And she just came from a very different kind of background. Her background with the Witnesses was more like, there was a knock at the door, and my grandmother, who, was kind of she was a smart lady, but she just lived out in the country. And, here comes this, Bible salesman or whatever, and she was like, well, yeah, why don't you come on in and talk to my kids? They could use some Jesus, and, Jesus never hurt nobody. And so he came in and studied the knowledge book, I think, the blue one, the little blue one. Anyway, so all of the kids became witnesses, and my grandparents kind of orbited around it, but they were never, I don't even think they ever got baptized. But all of their kids, with the exception of like 1 or 2, were witnesses and remained witnesses. My mom was a very shy and quiet person. All of her siblings and her parents and her family were very loud and jovial and always laughing and funny and playing guitar and all this stuff. My mom was just kind of a little bit different. She kind of sat off to the side and was just very quiet, and she was a pleaser, So anyway, that's how my mother and father met. When they turned 18, boom, they got married, right? They got married, and of course that was a bad idea because they were just too young. And I guess my dad, because my grandfather was so difficult to live with, and my grandfather moved into this congregation, maybe like 30 people or something, and just took over. And he brought, his hard line, no nonsense, into this little congregation in the Ozarks. And, heads rolled. So he was the presiding overseer there. He opened up a janitorial company, of course, and he hired all the witnesses. So everybody in these, little surrounding towns, they all worked for my grandfather. So he was kind of like also the have, and that was, and my dad, who had a different father than him, was just a little bit different, My dad he's kind of short, and my grandfather is like tall, dark, and handsome and very imposing, broad shoulders. And my dad is, he's not like puny, but he's a shorter guy, and, he's not like that. He looks more like his father, So he had this terrible complex that he wasn't good enough. And he was mad at my grandfather all the time for just being an asshole, for not letting him listen to rock music or wear blue jeans in the 70s. I mean, can you imagine in the 70s having to wear double knit pants because your dad won't let you wear blue jeans? I mean, anyway. So him and my grandfather fought like cats and dogs. My dad had a terrible complex. On top of that, you know, he felt bad about all the normal things that JW kids feel bad about. And he had told me that anytime he did anything wrong, because they lived next door to the Kingdom Hall, he would go over and sit on the stairs at the Kingdom Hall and cry in the middle of the night because he felt bad about whatever fucking stupid thing he did that wasn't even a big deal. So he moved in with my mom and immediately tried to be the head and be the big man, you know, was trying to be like my grandfather. And him and my mom, of course, went rounds. They went rounds and rounds, and they fought, and he was abusive to her physically. So he was also like tried to fear, you know, like if they were driving somewhere, he would drive erratically to scare her while he's screaming at her, you know, and she'd be begging, just like, please pull over, please let me out, you know. But he would slap her, you know. I guess this all kind of he eventually did have an affair, and he was caught with another Jehovah's Witness girl in their congregation. My mom and my dad's mom were out in service together, and they kind of knew that my dad was flirting with this girl, and it was making everyone a little uncomfortable. So they drove past, you know, the road to this girl's house, and my dad's car was like parked out in the woods, like trying to hide that he was there. So anyway, he got caught, and he got disfellowshipped. So around this time, my mom was like, you know what, I'm leaving. Not leaving him, but she said, I'm moving away from Missouri because she was so humiliated by what had happened. Very embarrassed. She's like, I'm leaving. And he was like, I'm leaving too. And they were like, okay, let's leave together. And they decided to move back to Washington State, where my dad had moved from. And it was kind of like, you know, he's always loved it up there, and he wanted to move back, you know, to Seattle. So they moved up there alone. They're like 20. They have no college education, barely have a high school education because they homeschooled. And they struggled. They got in with witnesses that my grandparents had known in Washington State, and they hired my dad on as a janitor for one of their janitorial companies. And then I was born up there. So I guess things were good for my mom and dad for a long time. And, you know, there's something to be said when it's just like the two of you, you know, and you're struggling financially or just against something. And it just kind of brings your relationship together. I've had that before, you know, where sometimes struggle can really strengthen your relationship. So they were really, really happy up there, even though they had no money and they didn't know anyone, and, you know, it's just kind of crazy. And then my grandparents moved up because I was born and I was their first grandchild, so they wanted to be closer to me. So I guess, you know, that's when their relationship kind of turned south a little bit, because my dad they would fight, and he would go over to my grandparents' house and like rail about my mom. You know, I dated a guy once that did that, who, like, if we were having an argument, he would call his mom and then like tell his mom everything that I was saying. Like, can you believe this? That relationship didn't last very long, but I guess that's what my dad would do. Like, in the middle of their fight, he would like go over to his parents. And then the abuse got bad, really, really bad. So this is when my memories kind of start. My dad had a really, really good job at the time. He was working at a factory. It was a union job. It was a great job, just making tons of money. So my mom didn't have to work, and we had a really nice house, and he just kind of got lucky and landed in this, and we were just doing really, really well. So I was a happy kid. I gotta say, from the time when my memories start up until I was about 9, those are some of the happiest times of my life. Probably the happiest times. I loved my mom and dad. Loved them. That is all I can really remember feeling was love. I felt so much love for them and for my grandparents. I was incredibly happy, and I was so fortunate because we had all of this money and I was an only child. I reaped all the benefits of that. So I I had lots of Barbie dolls and all that stuff. But my mom and dad fought a lot, and they would fight pretty viciously, and it was just kind of a normal part of my life, was hearing my mom and dad scream at each other. They would do it a lot in the car, and sometimes I would get involved if it got really, really bad, and I would tell them to please stop, please stop. I remember doing that a lot. But it was just very, very normal. And usually what would happen is they would go in their bedroom and shut the door and then scream, and like I could hear things banging. I don't know what they were doing, but it was bad. When they did that, I would just go in my room and shut the door and play and just try to distract myself from what I was clearly hearing in the next room was abuse. So when I got to be about 8 or 9, things got really, really bad. And there was one day when we were coming home from a meeting, and they were fighting. I think we were coming home from book study, as it was late and it was a midweek. They were fighting, and I was in the back seat, and we pulled into the garage, and my dad got out of the car and was going towards the door, and I got out, and my mom got out, and she went around to where the driver's side was, and she said, "Daly, get in the car, get in the car." So I jumped in the car, just like I didn't know what to do, and she jumped in the driver's seat and she backed out and drove away, and my dad is standing there like, what I guess now I know that what was happening was that my mom was afraid that he was going to hit her, that it was getting to a point where she knew that she was going to receive some sort of physical abuse. So she was afraid. She drove me down to a grocery store like 2 towns over, and we sat in the parking lot, and she cried. And I was having like 8, and I was just kind of, like rubbing her arm, like it's okay. I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea, but I was just like, it's okay, don't cry, stop crying, it's okay. And she said, I'm so sorry that you're here. You shouldn't be here at this grocery store with me. You should be, because it was our night to watch Star Trek. The Next Generation was kind of me and my dad's thing, and we loved to watch it together. And we would come home and watch it after the meeting. That night of the week, she would say, she was sitting there going, "You should be at home watching Star Trek with your dad. You shouldn't be here with me." So that's what I remember about that. So we went home. The next big memory I have related to my mother and father's relationship and some abuse was when the cops showed up. So they were arguing, and my mom was afraid, so she called the police. And this was like 1993, so in Washington State now, I know the rules have changed a lot. Like, if anyone calls for domestic violence, someone is going to jail, no matter what. But at the time, it was like, "Sir, we need you to can you just go away for a while? Can you go stay the night with your parents tonight," or something like that. They didn't really do anything. Because my mom had called proactively. She was afraid that it was going to happen. I remember I was in the back porch wearing my, I was roller skating on the back porch, my Barbie roller skates, and just looking inside at the police in my house, making statements. And one of them did come out and talk to me. I don't remember what he said, but I just sat down a step and started to cry, and he just left. So that was the next big thing that happened. One of the very last things that happened that was kind of related to abuse, and I spoke about this in one of my more recent videos, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but this was probably the biggest thing. When I was about 7 or 8. I was in my room playing. My parents were in their room fighting, and all of a sudden my bedroom door just flies open, and there's my dad, and his eyes are big, and he's like scared. He's freaking out, and he's, come on, we have to go pray. And I'm, what? So he grabbed me by the arm and drags me out of my room. And my mom, he's got her arm in his other hand, and he's dragging both of us. He runs us down the hallway, and we have to get in the living room on the floor, get on our hands and knees, hold hands, and my dad prays because there's a demon in the house. So he's praying to Jehovah to get the demon out. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a demon? I was just playing Barbie dolls. I had no idea. But he was panicked. He was freaking out. And my mom didn't say a word. And I didn't say a word because, I was just very, very confused about this whole situation. But anyway, after he was done praying to Jehovah to get this demon out, he says amen, and then he threw himself face first onto the couch, just like still on the ground, but face into the couch, and sobbed uncontrollably. My mom just got up and went back to her room and shut the door and locked it, and I was just left sitting there in the living room floor like, what the hell is going on here? Yeah, that was a really weird thing. And as it turns out, which I found out many years later, what had happened was my dad had hit my mom. He backhanded her out of anger, and then thought a demon must have made me do that. Instead of just, taking responsibility for his actions, no, a demon must have made him do it. So anyway, that was the last thing that my last big memory related to what was actually going on with my mom and dad, because they kept it very, very hidden from me. Outside of the fights in the car, what was really going on was very hidden from me. And again, I was happy. I was super happy. So they did a really good job of hiding that. So when I was 9, my dad went on a business trip. He went to Chicago for a business trip, and while he was gone, my mom decided that this is when she was going to escape. So she packed up the house. We got our my aunt and uncle came out. An aunt and uncle of ours from Missouri had come out and helped her pack up the house, and she was just going to move out to Missouri and run away.